Is the 8th.
Thank you. If you like this, they also have some peated Irish, Connemara, which it's worth a taste. And you've got the red, was it Red Wing, Red Bird?
This-
That's pretty good.
Okay, no public? No selectmen? We're on the air. So, today is September 8th. It's the Mashpee Board of Sewer Commissioners meeting at the Wacoit Meeting Room in the Mashpee Town Hall. We will start off with a Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We should take a moment of silence for those not among us or suffering that you know personally. Okay, we don't have any public participation, but we do have to approve the August 25th meeting notes, which have been finalized. Anyone have any questions, or can I have a motion to accept them?
I move that we accept the minutes of the August 25th as presented.
Second.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Let's everybody keep their mic in front of them so that we won't get any complaints. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? The old business. Ray, could you give us a confirmation that the contracts 1, 2, and 3 have all been signed by legal, as well as the Board of Selectmen and the business manager of the town, so that it is now a package that has been returned and presented to both the state and the contractors?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of the contracts have been sent to Town Council for review. I cannot confirm that that review is complete yet. That went through the Town Manager's office, but I will check right after the meeting. They were sent in advance of that in a preliminary form, and they were approved as the form at that time. All right, so these are in their final form. They have names, dates, numbers, and what have you in them. There are 3 contracts for the wastewater plant itself is 1, then collection system north is 2, and collection system south is 3. They're approximately 15 pages each, and with the 15 pages of the agreement, they're actually contained within the bid specs itself. Therefore, as an entire document, each contract is going to be about that thick. And that's because by reference, the contract documents, the bid documents are incorporated into the agreement, so it's part and parcel of it. But nonetheless, there will be the final approval as to form by Town Council, has to be approved by the Finance Director as to the availability of funds, and then ultimately signed by the Town Manager. The Commission approved the values for those contracts at the last meeting. So the values that you see in there are the values that we discussed the last time, and then the board approved contract 2 in the $5,200,000 range. That was for the base bid only for that one. So that's where we are. They won't actually be executed until we receive an authorization back from the state. So that's one of the things I would potentially be talking about a little bit later in the meeting is, what steps we follow from this point. And the first step is to request an authorization to award the contracts from the state SRF program. So that's where they are now. Everything's up there.
Any of the members have any questions about the contracts?
Yes. Yes, I have one question. Once this is all settled, do you have any idea of where we go from here next?
Where we go,
Yeah, beyond what you just said.
well, once we have our side completed with our side meaning the state, okay? One of the last things that happens is that the town manager signs the contracts. The contractor is required to sign them first, so they're sent off to the respective contractors. There's two different types of contracts we have. One's for linear construction, one's for vertical construction. So one contractor has 10 days to respond, one contractor has 5 days to respond. As far as the preliminaries go, we had already sent off all of the backup information to the state with respect to DBE especially, which is disadvantaged business enterprises. There are a number of contractors in that category for both contracts, and we have to be able to certify that they have a certification and that their bids are appropriate and their forms are filled out. All that has been done. So then each of the respective contractors, Waterline and RB Hour, will have to verify all that, which they're doing at the moment. And then they will sign the contracts, get them back to the town. Town will then execute the contracts. Once they're executed, then you can expect we're going to have, along with the contract goes what's known as a notice of award. So we're telling the contractor with the contract itself that the town intends to award that contractor to them and what they have to do after that, which means sign it, return it, and then submit all the bonds and insurance information that's necessary. Once we get all that back, that's when the town manager would sign the contracts. Then the last thing would be to submit all of that information back to the state again, all right, which affirms that we have an executed contract in place. The deadline for that is September 30th. Okay, so we'll make it, but it's close.
Tight.
I have one question, and it pertains to contract one. Has it been sent to the low bidder in draft form, waiting for the final signatures?
No.
How soon will it be sent to the contractor? Just a guess.
If we get the approval today or tomorrow, and I'm expecting that we will from the
Okay.
state, then if we got it today, it will go out tomorrow. If we get it tomorrow, it'll go out Monday.
Well, the town manager isn't here, so you're gonna have to wait for him to come back from vacation to sign these things. Are they gonna go out before then?
Well, the notice of award is ready to go. Okay, so that has.
All right,
the notice
that's
of
another
award.
subject. I asked the contract when it would.
The contract
probably go.
cannot go out if the notice of award doesn't accompany the contract. The notice of award has been signed.
Okay. What I'd like to know is if the contract or the notice of award, however you want to phrase this, includes tanks 3-1, 3-2, 4-1, and 4-2.
No,
That's what the commission asked for. Can you explain?
we don't have the money for it.
We do have the money for it if we drop other items.
If we what?
We drop in contract two, the $380,000 commitment there gives us about a third of what we need. And we had enough to actually cover 3-1, 3-2, 4-1, and 4-2 if we cancel that in contract two.
How do we have enough? I don't see where you're finding that money.
Well, I added it up when you were giving us all the numbers the last time we were together.
I had a different understanding, and I could be wrong as I didn't
Speak
do
up.
an accounting there, but it was my understanding at the last meeting, by dropping the Meeting House Road option, that gave us about a third of the funds we would need towards that goal, but not close to half or all of it. But I could be mistaken. That was the impression I left last meeting with.
No, that was my impression. It was about a third. actually a little more than a third. But we've got all sorts of potential contingencies in there, and we can move forward to include tanks 3-1, 3-2, 4-1, and 4-2. And it's my opinion, and I think the opinion of this commission, is that we want to go ahead on that basis, because if we don't get that concrete in the ground, we're gonna be paying more for it later, and there's no way around it. We've gotta put that in the ground, or we're not gonna have an operating station.
And I fully agree with that sentiment. However, at the present time, the funding is not available to accomplish alternate 3, and that's what that is. Alternate 3 is the last 4 tanks. I am working very hard to try to find that, all right? And,
Could I make a suggestion?
yeah,
I know you're working, and you're working hard at it. Can you go to Rodney and tell him he's got to find it? Because I think that he has a little more horsepower than either you or this commission. And Rodney will go through the details with you and see what we can do. And I wouldn't hesitate to go to Rodney. I know he won't be back now until next week, but that would we still have time to do this, because the contract will not be mailed for a number of weeks.
actually, we don't. Once we sent that request for authorization to award to the state, it was based on the decisions the commission made last week, which for contract 1 was option 1, or alternate 1, and alternate 2 only. So all those values and all the contract documents read that way. If DEP approves it, that's what they're approving it. We would have to resubmit the DEP, give them another 10 days, and we don't have 10 days. So the way we would do this,
What do you mean we don't have 10 days?
we don't have 10 days.
We can file anything and go back and review it later. There is no rule against that.
Oh, yes, there is. This is a very legal process, and we cannot do anything at all unless we get an authorization from DEP. Everything comes to a grinding halt until that happens.
Right,
The paperwork has been submitted,
right.
and it is very precise to the penny. If any change were to occur, we have to resubmit.
I understand that, but there's nothing to prevent us from resubmitting.
We don't have the time to resubmit. If
We have the time. We're not going to get into construction until late fall.
Mr. Chairman, it's not about construction, it's about a deadline. The deadline is the 30th of this month. Today is the 8th. That's not a lot of time to complete everything. And I would not recommend that the towns resubmit another permission to award to DEP for that. We could just as easily handle it after the fact with a change order.
I would be uncomfortable changing our position at this point and further muddying the waters before that deadline. I know we've all, well, not we've all, because many of us are new members, but a lot of effort has been put for a number of years to get to this point, and I would be more comfortable discussing a change order after the fact rather than going after a change at this point in this late stage of the game.
Well, I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't do it, but it has to be done. If it's a change order, it's a change order. But it will get done, because if we don't do it, it's going to cost us probably as much as $1 million more with some probability.
I couldn't agree with you more.
That's it. So we will plan on, once we are moving forward, on processing a change order before we build the plant.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's all I'm asking for.
Yes.
You got to play the game with the state and the other financial situations, and we've got to have legal do everything for us, you know, in the proper manner, but we've got to have those tanks.
I couldn't
And
agree more.
you are personally recommending a change order at this point.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't get that at the beginning of our conversation at all.
Yep.
I understand your position. There was one other thing that we were looking for, and I appreciate you sending me the street listings, which I pull them up and look at them all the time myself anyway on the town database. But what we needed was an area count of the houses in each of the proposals areas for Phase 2. that there was potential of 510 connections in A, 550 connections in 2B. I could not decipher them from the paperwork you sent me.
Excuse me, I was under the understanding that you, Ray Jack, that you did give us an idea that D was larger than the others, so that we did have some idea of the scope of the different sizes. Am I wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
Believe it
I
or
thought we
not,
had it.
I was looking for the document that I had here, but I have it on today's presentation for that.
You have the number for each of
The number of properties, yes.
Excellent, thank you.
that's what we need in each of them. Can you tell me offhand right now, so I don't have to interrupt your production, what the total count was?
I don't know, I don't have it off the top of my head. It was up there. I know there were over 1,000 on one of them alone. 1,000 on one of them, 800 on another.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Excuse me, Mr.
We're
Chairman.
going to have the ability to process about 3,000 more once we put in line 2, 3, and 4 that are going to use those tanks. We have the probability of being able to run as much as almost 3,000 units. So it looks like if we get the second, third, and fourth lineup, we could handle all of phase 2, in your opinion, at this point?
Well, it depends on which phase 2 you're talking about, Mr. Chairman.
Your recommended phase 2.
Yes,
Okay,
it should handle that.
yeah, great. 24 per day per app. GHD. I have had conversations that were either on board or off board with various members of GHD for the last 5 years about the fact that this facility, although we've gone ahead with the facility, which is represented in Contract 1 and collection areas in Contract 2 and 3, in addition to that, the town with some high probability will have to double the amount of processing. Now, it could be by building another unit on the same location, possibly. It could be by making sure when we lay out the foundations for this building, that we can extend the width of it to include 4 more sets of tanks and 4 more production lines. So have you had any discussion at all with GHD on the vision for the second large investment in the town of Mashpee?
I have, and it goes like this. The site is relatively constricted. There are property line distances that we have to try to maintain. Then there's an issue of a lease, I believe, on a portion of the property to the north that would have to be resolved. So is it possible to increase the capacity of plant at that site? Yes. The question really is, however, the discharge capacity. So that's one of the things that we're going to have to try to analyze relatively quickly within the next couple of years, what the total maximum amount of wastewater we're going to be able to discharge at that site. That's the big one.
Okay. Everyone here should be aware of the fact that we have the possibility of using the area in Willow Bend by maybe actually processing their waste as well as returning the wastewater to their geographical area for insertion. Assuming that this area can either provide a deposit for the processed water, or we can pump it to Willow Bend or some other location, it still presents itself as the logical location for the larger scale processing in the town of Mashpee. So I hope we're all on that same path,
I agree.
okay?
I agree.
I don't have anything to argue with you about. Anybody else got any questions? And we also have some people that are, I presume, residents of town, just 2 of you, in addition to a selectman that's behind you now. Do you gentlemen have any questions that you'd like to know? Okay,
Thank you.
are you all done?
I'm good.
I had a question
Please.
for Ray. I went through the data sets carefully, and I came up with your totals for the developed properties.
Right.
And then I started calculating the R5s and the R2s and the R4s for residential. Do you guys have a feeling yet about the commercial interest in connecting to the sewers?
I don't have one that's specific for Mashpee, but I do have one that is general in nature. And most commercial businesses would go for something like that. They would
would.
want a sewer connection
So they
if
would
possible.
seek it pretty quickly. And there's some properties, some large properties, including commercial, that have probably installed their own systems recently because they're newly built. Would they be doing the same thing? I'm just curious. It's just,
At the present time, whenever a sewer line will pass a location, whether it's commercial and/or residential, there's a requirement to connect. So it doesn't matter when that system went in. They can always ask for a waiver, but generally, something like that is normally not approved. And I say that for a very specific reason.
yeah, I would think so.
That the wastewater plant that Mashpee is building is a very good plant. It's a very sophisticated plant. And it has a high reduction potential. So your typical wastewater coming out of a house is in the 20 to 40 range in nitrogen, milligrams per liter. The advanced IA systems will take it down to 19, okay, 18. Your plant is going to take it down to 3. That is a substantial reduction. So for my purposes alone, I would look at a Title V system or even an IA system and say that it can't even come close to meeting what you're doing. Therefore, why should it be allowed to continue when there's an alternative available to be able to
Well, they'll
remove that
have
nitrogen?
They'll have time too. But I just was thinking that may impact, to some degree, the timing
Right.
of these things.
For what it's worth, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about this in a few minutes from a presentation perspective, that too is going to be a big issue. It's not one specifically for the board to handle with respect to the on-site systems, but it's going to play very heavily in the phasing, all right, and the
Yeah,
plan
that's
with
what I would-
respect to the sewer.
That's
And I'll be able to
precise.
explain that more.
Okay, that was my orientation. Okay, cool, thanks.
Keep in mind one thing, there are so many pounds of nitrogen going into the system, and that's what we're addressing.
Yeah.
This town is fortunate or unfortunate, just depending on the way you look at it. Doesn't have any heavy industry. We don't have any polluting industry to speak of. We are just dealing with human waste here.
Yeah,
If things change, they change. They will be addressed.
yeah.
But at this point in time, you can't draw any line discriminating between industrial and
No,
domestic.
I wasn't
Okay.
thinking that, but.
No, but every sewer
Yeah.
system in the world is confronted with it, except for little towns like Mashpee. We're out of the realm. We're not a city. We don't have any heavy industry that pollutes.
No, I know,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Just so I understand, September, the end of September is the drop dead date to get everything squared away. In your past experience, how long does it take to spool up actually some work in the field?
It really depends on how committed a contractor is right now, and I can assure you they're all busy, all right? This is their time of year. So if they're finishing up a contract or two, they can mobilize pretty quickly. If not, it takes a little longer, but they're going to have to do something within 30 days of an executed contract. They're going to have to show up. So they'll give us a schedule, which I'll be forwarding to the commission, so you will know what that schedule is going to be. It gets heavily refined very quickly, meaning that specifically with the collection system, I'm going to want to make sure that all of the people on all of the streets know about when to see activity, because some will be sooner rather than later. So I want to make sure that everybody's fully aware of that. So they'll be submitting a schedule to that effect as to when they expect to be on any given street at any given time, all right? And that's usually helpful from a public relations perspective, so.
There's a lot of flexibility in what you can do with construction too. The primary contractor, we can ask him to accelerate his site development in order to show the town our feet are getting wet and we're moving ahead.
Right.
Because that merely requires bulldozing and backhoeing and maybe stringing some fence or building some berms, which would be earthen. The second thing is, as we go to the collection agents, to put a line down a street does not mean that you're gonna have to tie up in the next 90 days. You're gonna tie up when the plant can take it. So we might put street drains in months ahead of the actual connection requirement time. So we can do that flexible, with some flexibility. We can go down all the primary lines and then work on the secondary lines all the time before the plant is actually built. So a lot of this will be simultaneous, the upright plant and the flats, both the north and south of Route 28. Are you still hopeful that we can do something to show the public by this fall that we are getting this whole thing underway?
Oh, absolutely. And kind of to tag on to what you just said, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the actual work to be done, they're going to want to take advantage of the weather.
Yep.
All right, you never know what the winter is going to be, but so far, it's not bad, well, because it's not winter. But nonetheless, if it's a good winter, and I say that because they're going to want to put concrete in, okay? And
that's
the
the
better
first
the weather,
heavy.
the better it is. So there's going to be a lot of that, and they're going to want to try to get it done quickly.
Especially the tanks, 3s and 4s.
Exactly, exactly.
Ray, the schedule that we're gonna receive, is this gonna be in the form of a Gantt chart or a PERT chart, or how?
We can translate it into, I mean, their schedules are generally going to be Gantt charts, but a lot of times the public has difficulty reading a Gantt chart. So we can convert it into anything that we want to make it more understandable, or something like that.
Can we require a Gantt chart,
Yeah,
just to keep everybody on their toes?
yeah,
And then we can interpret it and give it to a publicist or whatever necessary to
Yep.
make it easier to understand.
yep, absolutely.
But if we have a Gantt chart, then we can follow up on things and make sure they're getting done.
Right.
So we'll ask for a Gantt chart.
And I just have one other question, so that once the schedule is set up, would we then have the ability to set it up on the website and begin letting people know where
Yes.
things are going? Because I think the sooner and the quicker we get everyone involved, residents, knowing what's going on, the better off we're going to be.
All right, that's a double-edged sword,
Okay,
okay? And it has to be done very carefully.
I agree. I agree.
Because we can have the guy sign a contract to have everything done by the 1st of December. Okay? And it doesn't happen.
Yes, I
And we
understand
take the
that.
hit for it.
I understand that, but I guess I'm just emphasizing not necessarily what's going to go on the website, but there will be something to show residents that we're moving forward and that we're on our way, but without the commitment of
We
it
can
not happening.
definitely make up a schedule without being absolutely definitive on the individual dates. But by fall, we're gonna break ground. By spring, we're gonna do something else. By summer, we're gonna have a whole bunch of roads torn up.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be verbalized, but
Well, one of the most important things in communication to the public will be just communicating what's expected of them. What does this mean to my house? Do I suddenly have to come up with 30 grand to connect to a sewer? How does this work? And we need to be able to, using social media and our website, as Meredith said, in real short snippets, 15-second, 30 seconds video, tell them this is how it's going to work, this is what it means, this is how it's funded, this is what you can expect.
During the course of this month, I'll be sending a letter out to all the affected residents in the areas, north and south and around the plant. informing them of the contract, that it is going to happen, coming soon to a theater near you, and giving them some information in the letter, but at the same time, probably scheduling a meeting, maybe at the high school, where I can have some other people, such as the county, present with the county septic program for loans, as well as on the municipal side, somebody from our finance department to be able to explain opportunities for the homeowners and what it means, and be able to pretty much answer all the questions that they may have. You know, I'll make sure that our engineers are there and that it becomes a productive and an informative opportunity for them. So
Basically, an invitation to those streets that are going to be affected.
Right,
Right.
right,
Residents, rather.
yes,
And by then, you got a database, so you know who absolutely each one of them is. You know,
right,
you start putting names, well, you got names in the file already. It's all it.
yep.
Just sort that
Right.
database out. Okay. There were a presentation you'd prepared for us.
This is really going to be about the Phase 2 areas for the
Right.
most part. All right, it's very short.
Bless you.
I think it's only 65 slides.
With a brief intermission.
Rodney told me it was gonna be 3 hours, is that true?
That's why he went on vacation.
Okay, I think first, what I'll do is go over the different phasing areas then for the commission, and then right after that, there's a slide that I've got as to why this is important at this particular time. It takes, I think, a greater significance now than before. So, okay, this was the original plan, and you can notice that, oops. Okay, the black lines, they represent all town boundaries. So of course, this is Mashpee here, and then it goes up, Shoestring here, and that's Barnstable on the other side. So the boundaries are important, especially to understand how much of the sewering effort needs to happen that may not even be within Mashpee's borders. Then you have a red line that is circling everything here. That's,
Let's make sure, we have no intention of putting pipes in some other town's property, correct?
I
Because the
don't,
way it gets mentioned gets misinterpreted all the time.
yes, I don't, no.
There are no plans to sewer sections of Sandwich or Barnstable and included in our process at this time. It's not
Yes.
impossible that we may do this, but
Right. There is one exception, and I'll give that one to you in a minute.
Okay.
But, so you have this red line here that really circles the town as well as some of the adjacent towns. And you can see the area between that red circle and the black line, that you do have areas that theoretically are within that watershed line that would need sewering, but they are outside of Mashpee's town boundaries. These show the various phases of the 2015 plan, so they're color-coded and legends on the bottom right. Phase 1 is where we are now, for the most part. This area here is what we're actually doing. This area up here is where Town Hall is and Great Neck Road, and that's not being done under this contract. Phase 2 is all of the blue, and so you have this area down here on one side of Pompanesett and Shoestring, and then this other area over here is in Phase 2 as well, but that's not in Mashpee, that's actually in Barnstable, and that's the other side of the embayment. And then these areas here in blue, this area over here, John's Pond and Ashumet Pond in blue, and then this area all the way up here, which is wholly and entirely within Sandwich, but yet it's held in our Phase 2 plans. Then you have Phase 3, which is all of the green areas, and you can see that's rather extensive as well. You got this area down here, then you got this area here, all of this here, all of this here. Phase 4 is the yellow. Up at the top is probably one of the most significant, which is this one up here. That is wholly within Sandwich. And then down here, 90% of this is actually in Falmouth, not in Mashpee. And that would represent the Wacoord Bay area. And then you have Phase 5, the orange areas, and a fair amount of those is up here in Sandwich as well. And I would point out too that there was discussion in the past about that little dot right there, that little star. That's the Forestdale School treatment plant, and and it has a very limited capacity, so it's not in a position to take on residential neighborhoods. But I needed to at least point that out. So there's the original Phase 1 through 5 plan.
It should be repeated and repeated and repeated. That in the original plan, it was for the watershed, okay? It wasn't just for Mashpee.
Oh, I know.
It was for the watershed, which included a little of this and a little of that. Now, as we move forward into our actual planning, we're not gonna do those little of this and a little of that that are out of the town. We're gonna pay attention to the town requirements, because these other areas must be sewered at some time by state requirement, probably, by those towns, not us.
Right. And that's absolutely true. And on the last slide that I have for this, I've taken all of those other areas that are outside of town's boundaries off of the map, so it makes it a little bit cleaner to see where we are going to be going. Now, the Phase 1 through 5 here, on the original plan, was over a 25-year horizon. So you were looking pretty much at each phase occurring in 5-year intervals. What I would remind the board is that we are already behind, because that plan was in 2015, and we're probably 5 years behind a start time for Phase 1. So that timeline has changed. So then you have 2A through E. This is what the commission had presented to the Board of Selectmen in November of 2021. There was some discussion about it prior to that, but it was presented at that particular meeting. So you have 2A down here, and this is only on this side of the bay. The other area that was in Barnstable is not being considered under this. But that is a Phase 2 area anyway, the light blue. Then you have Phase 2B, which is up here, and that's considered the East Main Street area. 2C, right next to it, would be the West Main Street area. 2E is the Johns and Ashuappan area over here. Now, that was presumed to go to the Joint Base Cape Cod plant or a back road site. Back road sites are just to the northeast of this. There's 3 of them there, and this is their tagline showing back road 1, 2, and 3. In theory, they can handle a plant and or a discharge location. And then we have, these are some of the parcels came off the map with respect to how many parcels are in each particular area under that 2A through E scenario. So 2A, which was the lower portion, was 363 parcels. 2B was 1,023. And when I say parcels, I should say developed parcels, not developed plus undeveloped. These are developed parcels. So that's the largest one on there. Then 2C was 189, relatively sparse. 2D, 162 is a number only for Mashpee. But yet the depiction, and I'll back up to it for a minute, actually included a fair amount of properties in Sandwich, as it was presented last year. And then 2E, 849 properties around Johns and Ashuappan. So that's fairly high. The flow for that represents about 230,000 gallons a day. So it's a significant flow just for 2E alone. And then I do want to back up here and just go back over to, over the area for 2D. If you look at 2D, you can see how it crosses the town boundaries. But as I said, when this was presented with the board, it's in context with what the chairman was saying, in that although it includes a fair amount of sandwich, it wasn't intended to have the town necessarily do that unless they came to an agreement. So this was one exception, that the town was thinking about a possible negotiation of doing those sandwich properties in lieu of additional work that would be done by Sandwich north of Mashpee-Wakeby Pond. All right?
I've messed something up here in my notes, and maybe I'm confused or maybe not. When you go back to the previous slide that shows how many units are in each,
That showed which?
just go back to the previous slide that showed.
The original phases?
No, go to the one previous slide.
The one with the numbers.
Right there, stop. Under 2E, you've got 849. Okay, I screwed up 2E and D. I'm all set now.
All set?
2D, 2E.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I did want to be clear on that section 2D, and that is why I scaled it back to the town boundary
Yeah.
only on that. So then we have, this is the latest version. And I think what's significant here is 2D is about half the size that it originally was, and that's because it's containing everything within the town boundaries. 2E is completely removed from this.
Does 2D get both sides of Santuit Pond?
I'm sorry?
Does 2D as in dog
Right.
get both sides of Santuit Pond?
It's not both sides, no. It's
just
one
the
side.
west side.
Yes, yes. So 2E is off on this, and that's because it's, the intent for 2E under these scenarios was to take it to Joint Base Cape Cod. We do not have any commitments on any of that at the present time, and it's questionable about what it means for the future, but that's something we're gonna have to work through. That's gonna be one of the more costly collection systems to build, and that's because it's right on the water. So therefore, you're in the water table when you're putting mains in, and dewatering is a fairly extensive process that slows a contract down considerably. So that's gonna, the collection systems in those areas are gonna be some of the more expensive that you'll see.
Which area was that?
I'm sorry?
Which area is that where you're suspecting?
2E,
To
the
Edward.
Shumet and Johns Pond.
Right.
Okay? And the flow for this, since it's over like 230,000 gallons, my presumption is that that flow, one way or the other, would stay on the other side of town. That if it
That water
doesn't,
table there is higher than a lot of people understand.
what is?
The, around Shumet and Johns Pond, that is one of the higher areas in town, believe it or not. We may not be in the water trouble, surface water trouble. I'm sorry,
Water table?
water table problem.
Right. Well, I know in the areas where I've worked, not in that specific area, even though it is higher on the mound.
Right.
We've done, I know in Falmouth, we've done a lot of work around pond areas, and
I
it's
know
high.
that's true, but we're gonna find
Yeah.
that here or there, and sometimes even the engineers can't predict it.
Yep.
It happens.
And I hope you're absolutely right, because it brings the cost down if that's the case. And then 2F is added down on the bottom here, that's a sandalwood area. And it's ironic, I'd gone down there to take some pictures of the Mashpee River.
Right.
Specifically because it's a large wetland. And I wasn't able to download them fast enough to show them to you, but I think considering how much of the nation's wetlands are gone today, over 50%, you really have a treasure with the Mashpee River. I mean, it is probably one of the more perfect and pristine-looking wetlands that I have seen. And yet, unfortunately, it is being impacted. Well, all those pictures that I took, and I will show them at some point, come right from this development. All right, that's how
2F.
close they are.
2F, how many houses are in there? 40?
That's, I think it's more than 50, but,
Approximately 50.
Yeah.
Because I get in there all the time walking my dog, and I have friends that live in there. That's not a high priority area because of this density is so low.
maybe not.
It's gonna be very expensive to connect those houses.
And that's, well, but that's the thing, but you do have, you should look at it, let me
Yeah.
put it that way, all right?
Low priority,
Yeah,
Excuse me, that's
And-
2D?
Two
To F.
Foxtrot.
Okay.
Excuse me, could you repeat the density, how many parcels are in Sandalwood? How many
About-
homes?
I would say about 50.
50, thank you.
They're all on, what, acre and a half lots?
Yeah.
most of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
ideal for the
Right, I think I remember,
non-sewers.
when they went in, they had to have a post as high as their roof line was going to go, and if it could be seen from the river, they had to modify.
I don't know
So-
what you just said.
this is where it takes us, you, the town, is a NOPC, it's a Notice of Project Change. In the Secretary's certificate for the 2015 plan, the Secretary of the Environmental Affairs and Energy approves a plan. And it's a requirement for every phase that we have in there that we go through this process, a Notice of Project Change. So it means that once you start to do a phase or do something, whatever it may be that's contained in that plan, you're required to reevaluate everything in it. So for us, we started phase one. That is going to have a beneficial impact. We have to evaluate what that impact to sewering is going to be on the embayments. But it is something that's required. It's not an option for the town. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be done today. Doesn't mean it has to be done within the next 6 months. But it does have to be done before we can do anything else. So the purpose of this here will reevaluate the existing plan, the 2015 plan, under an adaptive management approach. So the town's plan is not just sewering. Although there's 5 phases over a 25-year horizon, a large emphasis has been placed on shellfish propagation, all right? So the town is now going to have to look at that, its efficacy, which just, for all intents and purposes, means, is it achieving what it was intended to achieve? We're going to have to evaluate the sewering effort we're undertaking, whatever stormwater management techniques we employ, and any fertilizer management or controls that we may choose to utilize. All of that is going to have to be evaluated. It's already been 7 years since the 2015 plan. This plan is a 2-year effort here, so that'll be 9 years after the fact. So this process would provide cost estimates for all of the phase areas, whether they're the existing areas and/or any modifications to the areas. It will allow the town to engage in financial planning for both operations and capital. Right now, we really don't have a capital plan for any future sewering effort. Operations is going to be an annual ongoing expense, whether the town does it or it contracts it out, either way. This will allow for the on-site system planning based on the sewer planning. And this goes back to Catherine's question with respect to the on-site systems. What the town is already doing, and necessarily so, presume that a Title V system fails. What to do? The Board of Health is the agency that is responsible for that, and they have decisions to make. So if they were going to get sewered within the next 6 months, would you make them put in a new system? Logic says probably not, all right? But the only way they're going to be able to do anything at all is if they know whether or not that area is going to be in a sewer service area. So this thing is already outdated, and it does need to be updated, and it will give the town those opportunities to make those decisions. And those decisions can get costly, meaning that you have your conventional Title V system. So if you have a failed system out there, what's it going to be replaced with? And the town may be leaning, or at least thinking about leaning, toward INA systems or innovative alternative systems. So those are the nitrogen removing systems. They're not cheap, all right? They usually go upwards of $20,000 or $30,000 to install them. And then the question becomes, if you require something like that, where are you going to apply it? So even if it's supposed to be theoretically in a sewer service area, what's the time frame before that area is going to be sewered? Tells them what they need to know. Because you don't want to have somebody putting in an expensive system and a year from now telling them, you got to get rid of it, we're putting in the sewer. Yes, sir.
Just one question on, that's fundamental to that, that has to come before the discussion of private materials, private processing. It looks to me, and I would like to give you a vote of confidence on what you've done, but if we took 2A, 2B, possibly 2C, and maybe you didn't include them, but not Sandalwood, the two other large, what do you call them? They're condominiums, but they're by the week. There's two of them there. Timeshare. But pick up those timeshare instead of Sandalwood. We get more pounds for the buck, all right? And those 4 spots could be costed and could go to the selectmen so that they would have the opportunity to say, let's do these 4 spots in phase 2. We also would have to include, if not already included, the tanks 31, 32, 41, 42, because we'll need them to process it. And then we would have a nut for X million dollars that we can move towards having the selectmen get it into the town meeting. So I think you've created the document information background that we need in those 4 places. If it's under 2,000, but it's around 2,000 units, that's a lot of nitrogen that will come out of the Mashpee River, along with all the other work that we've done or planned in phase 1. We should have a significant impact on the river. If we do that, that will endorse everything we need to do to go forward, because it will tell us how much good we actually do. We will take the river content of maybe 80 or 90 right now and pull it down to 50 or 60. We may have to get as low as 20, but we'll know it. And we'll know it by how many units we're actually tying to the sewer and getting down to 3 milligrams per liter. The IA units don't help us get the crap out of the sewer, out of the river. They are not sufficiently, productive. They only get it down to 19, not down to 3. So the other 16 grams are still gonna go into the river. So we've gotta plan our sewers and get moving on it and get as much in the ground as we can or we're just gonna fall behind. And this talk about doing the IAs, zip it up, because it doesn't work. Sewers are the answer. And the ones we can't get to because it'll cost us $25,000 or $30,000 to lay it down a 500-foot driveway, those can go on IAs on their own when their present system works, fails. Let's stay focused here and get phase 2 recommendation to the selectmen.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I have a question. And let me know if this is out of phase or out of order, but will the $330,000 that was suggested to go for the warrant be a way to fund this new part of the study, if you want to call it a study? In terms of
That is the reason that I'm putting this up here for you today. I just became aware of that this week, all right? What Monday night means with the Board of Selectmen, that this issue will be in front of them this Monday for that funding for this town meeting. Do I agree with it? Yes. And I'll probably be at the meeting that night. Do I recommend it to the commission? Yes. And believe it or not, it would be the phase 2 A through F recommendation that I would make. But you get all of this with that, all right? The value is going to be less than that, less than what's being proposed, all right? It's actually going to be less than about 250.
In terms of money, that you're saying it would be less than, or in terms of effectiveness?
No, the dollar value is
The
going to
dollar-
be less
okay.
than 250,000 a year to do this, to do what I have up here.
Okay, so we need to make a recommendation so that the select board will consider this as a way to go.
It would be very helpful, I believe.
Thank you.
I have a question. We have cut items out of Phase 1, namely Meeting House Road, for the sake of a more fuller and ultimately less expensive cost to build out our plant. Where can we put Meeting House Road and a path to Town Hall back in? Where is an appropriate place to prioritize that within hopefully Phase 2?
Well, I believe even though I didn't physically include a line around Great Neck to show Town Hall and all the way south and what have you, it is something that we will evaluate and look at. I can assure you that under any of those phasing approaches, this would get done. This would be part of that evaluation, this geographic area right here. But there's still issues of whether or not the town is going to be taking portions of flow for various phases to individual private plants. And I'm still working through a lot of those issues to see what it really looks like and what it means for the future for all of you to have to try to consider. Okay, so I've already met Tom, the individual who is responsible for Mashpee Commons. I visited their plant. I've already been to Sandwich, had discussions with them about, potential future things, no negotiations, mind you, but I needed to feel out where they may be and what kind of relationship we're going to have in the future for getting all these things. Why? It is important that the other towns do something because it's still affecting Mashpee's waterways and embayments, right? So it behooves us to have those relationships. We do have an intermunicipal agreement with Barnstable and Sandwich at the present time, but it's kind of a paper tiger. So it goes along with what our chairman said with respect to, yes, these places are out there in Sandwich, but what does it mean? It means that there's a value that is assigned to that development and/or those areas for contributions of nitrogen to our embayment. So it's to Pompanesett Bay and Wacoit Bay. For what it's worth, with the IMA we have with Barnstable and Sandwich at the present time, if you're not aware of what our percentage of work that needs to be done to remove the load, we're carrying between 60 and 75% of the weight of that. So even though you can see Sandwich up there and you can see Barnstable over there, with respect to those embayments, we're carrying the bulk of the load, so.
Thank you.
Yep. So it'll also result in an updated sewer CAD model. The CAD on the sewer CAD is computer-aided drafting, so it's really the modern version of designing sewer systems as opposed to the old pen and paper model. This is important because it always begs the question, all right, if you're going to do something like this and it's not going to cost $2 or $5 million, how are you going to have a ballpark idea what the costs to do a phase are? This is how. They plug information into those areas, into the sewer CAD model, and give them some scenarios, and then they can spit out some costs. This is the first step that you need in order to obtain a DEP watershed permit. We talked about that when DEP came down here, that the town's going to have to make a decision one way or the other as to which way they want to go. If the town goes with a watershed permit, those regs are probably going to take effect in the spring. First step, this is the first step toward design or an SRF loan. And SRF is a state revolving fund, the PEF/IUP. PEF is a project evaluation form, which is the first thing you have to do to try to get that loan. So this leads into that PEF. This completes a PEF, meaning that this puts a town in a position where you can say, okay, of phase 2A, B, C, D, and whatever, we want to do 2B or 2A or something. You can actually put the project in for approval by the state, and then the IUP is the intended use plan. So the PEF goes in August, the IUP comes out after January, and that tells you whether you got the money or not. This, and I do want to stress this, this is an evaluation/analysis process or effort, and it results in costing out all of the phases by pieces. It is not the design, and I do really want to be clear about this. The word design appears in the actual wording of the article that the selectmen are going to be looking at Monday night. This is not a design effort, and it's not intended to design it. It will plan it, it will map it out, but we are not going to actually be getting into the design. I want to be clear about that for one reason. When it comes to designing anything, and I guess I'll use a house as an example, I wouldn't go out and get an architect to design my house until I knew where my house was going to be. If he's going to design it for Florida, that's one thing. If he's going to design it for Alaska, there's another. Hawaii, there's another. Top of the mountain's another. Edge of the cliff is another. They're different designs. Until I know where I'm going to put this house, I'm not going to spend a dime on design. I don't want to see Mashpee do that, all right? Why? We're having a discussion here. We already know that even if we look at the Phase 2A through F plan, as our chairman already said, well, how about this little piece over here? And can we maybe look at that one and this one? You can and you should, without having to commit to a design for it at this time, all right? So that's why I have not included that on that.
Not included what?
There's no
In
design.
Phase 2.
Yes, there is no design on this effort that I'm talking about. It's not going to be designing the mains and the lift stations. This will come up with a phasing plan in geographic areas and cost estimates to sewer an area. If the town wants to do that area, they can say, okay, now we'll proceed with design.
Well, that's what we were trying to get to here. Get the outline of what we think we should be doing in a documented form so that we can ask for engineering detailed planning that will generate a cost that we can go and try and fund. And so that's the process to go forward. Are we prepared now to tell the selectmen we want to do 2A, 2B, 2C, and maybe the timeshares on Great Neck South? Because we can process them in the transfer station if we get in the tanks 3-1, 3-2, 4-1, 4-2. That package will then move the town forward another 50, well, it will double the amount of sewer processing in town over Phase 1, which we know we have to. We have to go maybe 3 times that to get the proper amount of nitrogen out of the system. But at Stage 2, plus all of the shellfish we have been putting in, we may see the nice curve come down on the Mashpee River to the point that we're getting to managing our pollution, which is where we've got to be. So are you ready to prepare a document that says what we want to do is hook up just under 2,000 houses and they're in A, B, C, and timeshare? Are you ready to document something like that so that the selectmen can discuss it?
Yes.
And then they will say to you, probably get a quote on it, find out how much it would cost, then it becomes a plan. And then we can hopefully move towards financing and determining how to finance it. And that would fit in nicely about 2 to 3 years from now, when Phase 1 is mechanically completed.
Oh, you're talking about waiting to do that?
Well, you've got to get everything done ahead of time for all of the phases, 2A, 2B, 2C, and timeshare. You've got to get it planned, you've got to get it priced, you've got to get it justified, you've got to get quotes out. We're going to be building Phase 1 while we do all of that. Now, this is going to be processed in the Phase 1 transfer plant, but it doesn't have the gear to do it. What we've got to do is get the money to do it. So we're 3 years out on Phase 2 in my mind.
Oh, on design, you're absolutely right. But as far as this effort, no, this would be now
What effort are you referring to?
to take this notice of project change effort now.
To say we want to do 2A, 2B, 2C, D, D,
Yes.
D. Yeah, that would be true. We have to put out a notice of change. This is a consideration, but we don't have any answers until the selectmen will get a quote on what's going on, what it will cost to go forward.
I already know.
Can you share it with us?
It'll be under 250,000.
Okay. It's under 250,000,
Yes.
2.5 million.
No, no,
to-
no. Under $250,000, not 2.5 million.
To generate the plan.
This effort is a analysis effort, all right? It is not going to be funding any improvements at the plant. At this time, all of that would come later as a result of this. This effort here is looking and
It's
revisiting.
going to cost us, you're saying, $250,000
Yes,
to get this done.
yes.
Have you told the selectmen that in writing?
They will by this Monday.
Okay, so it's in your time schedule. That's all I'm asking is how soon you're going to drop the load on the selectmen to get their butts moving?
Right.
Yeah, okay,
That'll be for this week.
all right. And tell us what we got to do to support that effort, to get their attention, to make sure that they do get the warrant out, perhaps not now, because they'll have to do it in their own timing. That's understood, but that's how we're going to convince the town that we are still moving ahead.
Right. So my suggestion here and now would be, if you do state support for a Phase 2A through F approach with maybe minor modifications as you may look at in the foreseeable future on it, I think that would go a long way.
Well, you'll have to write it up and give it to us, your draft, everything. If you're not used to this, folks, you go through 9 drafts when you get into construction. On a blueprint, you go through 20 versions. So he'll get number 1 or 2, maybe it's 2 by now, but number 3 to us, we'll look at it, we'll mess it up, and call it 4. And by the time it gets to the selectmen, they'll change it, it'll be revision 11, But we still make progress because we all look at it and make our contributions.
All right?
Great. Next week, we'll have a document?
Yeah.
A draft.
I'm going to work on it tonight.
Okay.
Don't we have to have
No, you can have the
something
night
for
off.
next Monday?
I have a question. Can't we make a motion to accept the 2A to F plan as you suggested today?
Yes.
With whatever modifications will need to be done, and knowing that there'll be finalization in the future?
We'll have a document to that effect in a few days.
I would think it would be very helpful for the selectmen to know that it is the decision of this committee to know that even prior to a document with specifics, this is what we want. We recommend this.
I agree.
Agreed.
So do I.
Make a motion that we
Yeah,
agree with his effort.
I would like to make a motion that we accept as presented by the interim engineer, sections, the new notice of project change that includes phases A through F
Yes.
with minor modifications.
Second.
I don't think it's appropriate to put E in this unless you're willing, and I would be as an engineer, by the way, to run a pressure line to the transfer station for area E and not worrying about the west side at all.
Yeah, and this wouldn't be, you wouldn't be voting on E.
Okay, so E is not included.
Alpha through Foxtrot.
No.
Okay, so it doesn't include E, Meredith.
Okay, so what,
That's why I said I want
Okay.
to see his plan first. Let's find out what's in it.
But this is
He's
not
given us the generalities, then we can refine it with him.
It's A, B, C, D, F.
A, B, C, D, F, I believe that we do have enough information
Okay.
to move forward to recommend that this then be presented and recommended to the select board.
Okay?
I
No,
reaffirm my second.
Thank you.
made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Well, no.
Discussion?
No, I just would suggest that we get the same the same data set for area F?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, that was a great job.
Yes.
Call the
That's it?
question?
Call a vote?
Call a vote? All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go for it.
Thank you. And to finish this then, now it's really quick. There's only 50 more to go. We've already gone over this. This would have been the next steps that we discussed. Permission to award, the contractor signs them, then town manager, and then ultimately the executed contracts have to be in DEP's hands on the 30th. This last one, though, I think is to get a clear understanding with respect to the plant, because I had mentioned before that these are underground tanks.
Yeah.
And as you can see that they are, so you've got the basement level is what they're abutting up against the building. So the building, the grade is going to be at the top of what that basement level is, or where you see the top
Put the
covers.
arrow on the ground level.
So, and that's why, unfortunately, when you look at how the footings are for the plant, I'm sorry?
Did you put the arrow on ground level so other people understand it?
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Okay. We got
It's
two of
like
these
Star
going.
Wars.
Right here. This would be ground level there.
Over on the right-hand side.
Yep, and this is ground. These are the covers on the top.
By
This-
the way, all the filter system is inside this building. It wouldn't be in our initial design unless they've changed it.
I can't speak to that
Yeah.
at this time, but, all right. And then this last one here. That was the last one. Okay, there you go.
Can you send this to each of us?
I'm sorry?
Can you send this proposal or this presentation to each of us,
Sure.
to the commission members?
Yep,
You might as
absolutely.
well send it to the selectmen while you're at it. Or we can forward it to them with our endorsement, or however you want to handle it.
Nope, I'm fine to go. This is good.
John's saying, hit him on the head with it. He's got it, okay. He caught it instead.
All right? Thank you.
Is that it?
Thank you.
No other questions? All right, folks, we have an issue about the election of a chairperson for the sewer commission. I'll just throw it open to any suggestions that anybody wants to make.
Yep. I would like to nominate Chad Smith as chair.
And I was
Happy second?
Second, 2A.
First and seconded. Any discussion?
Thank you for the support, and I'm happy to accept should you vote that way.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? They like air. Welcome our new chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Happy Joe.
Joe, thank you for all the work you have done in so many different ways. I can't even begin to thank you.
Well,
Absolutely.
I'm still gonna be in to mess things up. Just,
We realize that. We realize that.
any motions?
Yes, we need to still move forward to get the rest of the officers for the sewer commission. We still
sorry.
need to have a vice chair and a recorder.
I'd like to nominate Meredith as a vice chair.
I'll second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, discussion, any discussion?
Unless Meredith would like to discuss and tell us to,
I thank you for the vote of confidence.
Was that a yes?
That's a yes.
So you accepted before we voted?
No, I just am thanking people for the vote of confidence.
Oh, okay.
she might have told us to
Those
get
in
out of here,
favor?
too. Aye.
Those in favor? Welcome.
Thank you.
Now we need a
Recorder.
recorder? Did we have a recorder before?
No? Yes, we did, a long time ago. I think Ann was the recorder.
Okay,
I nominate Catherine.
all right.
I'll second that.
What does the recorder do for the sewer commission?
Not the clerk.
I think it's just,
No,
it's
it's
like
in
a,
addition, it's in addition to that. I think you're probably the third person in case something happens to the rest of us.
any discussion?
I accept, that's okay, yeah.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous again. Okay, so now we have a new board. Was there any correspondence? Nobody had any?
I just have one question for Ray Jack. Is there, where are we, the question might fall into new business, but where are we in terms of the watershed permit? We've mentioned that it's up to the town or for the select board to move forward with making a decision about applying for a watershed permit. Are we beginning to run out of time in applying for that?
The regulations will hit the street this fall, all right? The term that they actually use for that in the regulatory arena is called promulgate. They're going to promulgate regulations this fall. And they will take effect, if approved, in the spring. Beyond that, the town has to have something to give them. So what we have right now with respect to the existing plan may or may not suffice because it has to be basically attached with agreements. So DEP's made a statement, and it was very important at the meeting when they were here. They said, would they give one town, a permit? And they were hedging their bet. I saw the hesitation and everything else. They don't like doing that. So the permit will be a multi-town effort. As I said, we do have right now in place an IMA with Sandwich and Barnstable. I'm going to presume that'll stay in effect. But it'll also have to get revised because the big difference is going to be right now it's paper tiger, then it's enforceable and it's more of a commitment. Once that happens, that's what puts us in a position to submit a plan, and each of the respective towns would have to submit their plans along with it, and the whole thing as a conglomerate becomes a watershed plan. So each town can succeed or fail independent of the others without penalty, but it presumes that all of them are going to do some of the things that they say they're going to. And so each one will have to have its own plan to submit to get that plan. It'll be a collective plan. Time frame for that, you're probably looking about 2 years.
Yeah. I'd like to ask John a question. John, in reference to the plan for the DEP, right?
Yes.
In the future, quote, the regional plan and any changes to it, didn't they say that our 15-year plan, our 20-year plan, rather, was very sufficient in its direction and its planning, that it was basically a good job for us as far as the management of, the approach to the management of nitrogen?
Yes.
Okay. So this isn't going to be something new. It's just the state coming in and confirming their potential reality, so that
Yeah.
everybody will be on the same playing field.
Yes. Pleasant Bay is what changed that.
Right.
It's the Pleasant Bay model that, multiple towns got together, made a commitment together, and now DEP sees that as something that can be enforceable, all right, and
Right.
workable. So I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, there are changes, and the two major changes on that is the timeline. Your current plan is a 25-year plan. As I said, 5 phases, 5-year increments. The new plan is going to be a 20-year plan. Doesn't matter how many phases you have. Theoretically, you need to get to the end of it in 20 years and achieve a 75% reduction. That's the big number there. The current plan doesn't have a number associated with it, so there's nothing enforceable about it. The new one, it will be enforceable. Does that, in my interpretation, does that mean if you don't hit 75% in 20 years that the rockets are going to take off and the fines are going to start flying all over the place? No. I think it really depends on the level of effort that the town has put forward during that time. And if it's been a good effort that achieved good results, I think the town will be fine. So that's just my opinion, though.
It was actually, our plan is totally designed around the elimination of the excess nitrogen. That was defined by UMass, I can't remember, the Brian
House.
yeah, Brian and crew, that there is just so much that it's polluting it. They worked back to a point and they've created a TMDL, total
Maximum
amount
daily
per
load.
day, that can be dropped by human endeavors. So we know what that number is, and we're hopeful that the shellfish are doing a good job on it. And now we're just trying to pick up the rest of the nitrogen that we can identify within our area. The fact that the other towns were also included in the water shed for our 20-year plan now becomes definitive areas that we can apply pressure on the adjoining towns, that they are identified as being in our watershed because we have the primary problem. 70 to 80%, I guess. And this will help that we did all those planning. We can thank Tom Fadala for that. Because without that plan, we wouldn't be standing on solid legs like we are.
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
Anybody else? Gentlemen? Wayne?
Yeah,
Nothing?
you did a great job, Joe. Thank you very much for all your service.
Well, I had a lot of help. You gotta stand on people's shoulders, and that's what some people, get into public service don't do. They try and make their own path. We had a lot of people in the town that led to this, a lot of people that were aware about pollution, and there was just no consensus. Now there's a consensus. We all know we're polluting our town. We're gonna do something about it. So we've gotta keep that momentum up. We've got to start proving it. Let's get the area in the transfer station, get the trees cut, the ground moved to the level we need to put the underground tanks in and everything. And start addressing the neighborhoods that are going to be sewered so they understand that within a year or two, they're gonna have to connect. And come next spring, I hope we're digging streets and building the plant. If that's true, within a year from then, we'll probably start processing. And by then, we'll have all of phase 2 financed, hopefully.
Yep.
We'll have created a major impact on the pollution.
For what it's worth, and I do this as a career, I am very pleased with where we are now, as well as where we're going to be going. And I think that that's a really big testament to Mashpee, to the commission, to the Board of Selectmen. But I have a high confidence level that you're going to achieve a lot and a major benefit with respect to the embayments, the ponds, the river, all of it. I think it's a good package. And that's why even with this plan, this phase 2 plan, the concept of the commission is really to take and start helping the rivers and the ponds, as opposed to just the embayments. And I can assure you, the state's focus was strictly on the embayments. It always was and always has been. So I think it's to me, it's a very reasonable and holistic approach that the town has taken to this. So I think you're going to see probably a better result than you even might think once the sewering starts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd motion that we adjourn. Oh, Meredith?
Yep, just before we
Ms.
do.
Vice Chairman?
Just one more statement. I just want to say a public thank you to Susan Donovan for making sure that we got our agenda going and that we had a meeting today. This was a critical time for us, and without Susan's careful looking forward to say, we got to get this done, and she got it done. And I just want to say publicly, thank you, Susan, for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Susan.
And there's one more thing, Kat, can you bring up what you brought up to me at the beginning of the meeting?
It looks like I won't be able to be here for the next meeting, and I want to try and do it by phone or Zoom or however else you do it. So,
You got to speak to the electronics crew about that.
okay.
Because what they do is give you give you access and they put a PC here. You won't see us because
I
it can
don't-
only be aimed in
That's
one
okay.
direction.
You don't even need to see me.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll be broadcast on the screen.
No, don't do that.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
All right, I would motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.